I'm 53 years old, and for most of my life, I've done exactly what was expected of me. I married young, raised 2 children, and stood by my husband through everything: job losses, promotions, late nights, and early mornings. I believed love was steady and quiet, like the rhythm of our family dinners or the warmth of his hand as we drifted off to sleep. I never asked for excitement. I never looked for anything more. But then one afternoon, everything shifted. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. It all started with a phone call. I was folding laundry in the bedroom, my usual playlist humming in the background, when my cell buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't recognize the number, but something in me, curiosity, maybe, made me answer. "Mrs. Taylor, this is Charles Manning." I paused. The name rang a bell, but it took a second to place it. My husband Mark had mentioned him once or twice. His new boss. Big guy at the top of the chain. One of those names you hear, but never expect to speak to. "Yes, that's me. Is everything all right?" He was polite, almost too polite, his tone careful. "I hope I'm not intruding. I was wondering if you might have a moment to stop by the office today. It's about Mark." My stomach dropped. Not because I suspected the worst, but because I had no idea what to expect. He gave me the address, which was different from the usual building my husband worked in. It was their downtown office, the sleek high-rise with glass walls and polished brass doors. The kind of place that makes you sit up straighter just driving by. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't want to worry him, not if it turned out to be something small. So I changed out of my faded jeans and into a navy dress I hadn't worn in months. I remember pausing by the mirror before leaving, smoothing down the skirt, and brushing my hair behind my ears. For some reason, I wanted to look composed, like someone who could handle anything. The ride into the city was quiet. Traffic was light, the sun high, and yet my heart thudded like I was on my way to a courtroom instead of an office. When I arrived, a young woman in the lobby greeted me with a warm smile and led me to a private elevator. The whole place felt too quiet, like the air was waiting for something. Mr. Manning's office was on the top floor. The doors opened to a minimalist space, cool, white walls, abstract art, and a wide window behind a large desk that overlooked the city skyline. He stood when I walked in. Tall, silver hair just starting to gray at the temples, a tailored suit that somehow looked both expensive and effortless. "Mrs. Taylor," he said, offering a hand. "Thank you for coming. I know this is unusual." I nodded, unsure of what to say. His hand was warm, steady. He gestured for me to sit. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Tea?" "No, I'm all right. Thank you." There was a pause, a small one, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I'd want to assure you that your husband is doing excellent work," he began. "This isn't about performance or any kind of concern." I nodded again, but I felt a flicker of something beneath his words. His eyes searched mine as if looking for permission to continue. "What is this about, then?" I asked gently. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers folded together. "I suppose this is personal." My breath caught. He must have seen my reaction, because he quickly added, "Not inappropriate. I promise you that. I wouldn't bring you here otherwise." Still, I felt the tension build in the space between us like a rising tide. He went on, "I've seen the way Mark speaks about you, the way his face changes when your name comes up. It's rare, Mrs. Taylor. In this world, in this business, that kind of devotion. It's rare." I sat quietly, unsure if he was complimenting me or preparing me for something else. "I lost my wife 5 years ago," he said softly. "Cancer. Quick and cruel. And since then, I've learned how many things go unsaid in a marriage. How easily we assume we have more time." I felt something tighten in my chest. His voice wasn't rehearsed. It was heavy with truth. And in that moment, I wasn't listening to my husband's boss. I was listening to a man remembering love. "I asked you here," he continued, "because I wanted to tell you this directly. Your husband, he speaks about you like you're his lighthouse. And sometimes, hearing that from someone outside the home, it reminds us of how lucky we are. I thought maybe you deserved to know." It wasn't what I expected. Not even close. But what surprised me more was how I felt. Seen, acknowledged, and confused. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. Not from Mark, but from someone else. Someone looking in from the outside. The office was silent for a moment. I could hear the soft hum of the city outside the glass. "Thank you," I finally said, my voice catching a little. "That's very kind." He smiled. Not the polished kind, but something softer. Sometimes kindness is all we have. When I stood to leave, he walked me to the elevator himself. No handshakes, just a quiet nod. As the doors closed and the city floor numbers began ticking downward, I stared at my reflection in the mirrored walls. Something had shifted. I wasn't sure what yet. But I knew my day, my week, maybe even my life, would feel different from here on out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mark lay beside me, breathing deep, one arm draped loosely over my hip like always. It should have brought me comfort. It usually did, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that office, to the soft timbre of Charles Manning's voice, to the way he looked at me, not with desire, not even admiration, but with something closer to reverence, like he was speaking to a version of me I had forgotten still existed. I didn't tell Mark. Not yet. What could I even say? "Your boss called me to his office just to tell me how much you love me." It sounded too strange out loud. And yet, it meant something. I just didn't know what. The next morning, I moved through the house like I was watching myself from outside my body. I poured coffee, fed the dog, folded towels. But it was like I was trying to distract myself from something quieter, something I didn't want to admit. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated. "Hello," I said, almost whispering. "Mrs. Taylor. I hope I'm not crossing a line by calling you directly again." It was him, Charles. His voice carried the same weight, the same gentle steadiness that made my chest tighten for reasons I still couldn't quite explain. "No," I said, maybe too quickly. "Not at all. I've been thinking about our conversation. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable." I stepped into the dining room, away from Mark, who was clinking around in the garage. "You didn't. Not at all. It was unexpected, yes, but kind, sincere." He let out a soft breath, almost a sigh. "I appreciate that. I'm not in the habit of calling employees spouses, I assure you. But there was something about you, something I recognized. That made my heart skip." "Recognized?" "A kind of stillness," he said. "A quiet strength. My wife had that too. She didn't say much, but when she did, it stayed with you." I didn't know what to say. Compliments from strangers usually made me uncomfortable, but this didn't feel like flattery. It felt like a memory being shared, a private one. "Would you be open to meeting again?" he asked after a pause. "Just for coffee. Nothing more." I stared out the window. The backyard shimmered under the afternoon sun, the same garden I'd trimmed and watered for years. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. This wasn't a man asking me on a date. It wasn't even about him. It was about me, about whether I was willing to step outside the script I had followed for decades and have a conversation that might make me look at myself differently. "Yes," I said. "I think I would." We met 2 days later at a cafe by the lake. Public, quiet, safe. I wore a light green blouse I hadn't worn in a long time. Something about the color made my skin feel warmer, more alive. I left my hair down. Charles was already there when I arrived, seated on the patio with a book in his hand and 2 coffees on the table. One was already sweetened, just how I liked it. He'd remembered. "Thank you," I said as I sat down. "I figured it was safe to assume you'd show," he smiled. "There was something in your voice. Curious, maybe. Or reckless," I joked. But my voice was softer than I meant it to be. We talked about small things at first, the weather, the coffee, the lake view. But gradually, it shifted. He asked about my children, about my early life, about the things I used to dream about before life settled into a rhythm. I found myself telling him things I hadn't shared in years. About how I'd once wanted to open a small bookstore. About the poetry I used to write in the quiet hours before sunrise. About how I missed being seen as something other than someone's wife, someone's mother. He listened. Not passively, but with a kind of focused tenderness that made my chest ache. And then he said something that startled me. "Have you ever thought about what comes next for you? Not for your marriage. For you." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when the house gets quiet, when the kids have their lives and your husband has his work, what do you want your days to look like?" No one had ever asked me that before. I opened my mouth, closed it. The answer didn't come easily, but a feeling did. A strange, blooming sensation in the center of my chest, as if a part of me, dormant for years, was beginning to stir. "I don't know," I said finally, "but I think I'd like to find out." He nodded slowly. "That's all any of us can do." We didn't touch. We didn't flirt. But something passed between us as we sat there in the afternoon light. An understanding, a kind of mutual recognition. He wasn't trying to take anything from me. He was offering a mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I was willing to look. I didn't tell anyone about the coffee. Not Mark, not my sister, not even my friend Carla, who I usually confided in when something unexpected stirred in my world. It wasn't a secret in the scandalous sense. Nothing happened. Nothing improper. But something was unfolding quietly inside me. And I didn't know how to explain it without sounding foolish, or worse, ungrateful. I had a good life, a stable marriage, children who called on Sundays, a house filled with framed memories. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt awake. That evening, I sat in my favorite armchair, an untouched book in my lap, as Mark droned on about a software update at work. He didn't notice I wasn't listening. He rarely did anymore. He loved me. I never doubted that, but we had fallen into the rhythm of familiarity, of predictable dinners and recycled conversations. I watched him, really watched him, and I felt a strange mix of fondness and distance. We'd built a life together, a solid, respectable one. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped showing him the parts of me that still wanted to grow, to become asterisk. Charles had opened a door, and I couldn't stop thinking about what lay beyond it. A few days passed before he reached out again. This time, it was a simple message. Asterisk, will you join me for a walk? There's a park by the river. I think you'd like it. Asterisk. I stared at the screen for a full minute. I knew what I was doing. I knew what an asterisk could asterisk look like. But I also knew it wasn't about him. Not entirely. It was about that version of myself I had lost. The woman who used to take long walks just to clear her head. The one who once stayed up late sketching ideas for a bookstore with a little cafe in the back. So I said yes. The park was quiet, dappled with golden afternoon light filtering through the trees. Families passed with strollers, joggers waved, dogs chased sticks along the riverbank. Charles was waiting near a bench beneath a weeping willow. He wasn't in a suit this time, just dark jeans and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. You came, he said, smiling. I did. We walked slowly, side by side, neither of us speaking at first. Just the crunch of gravel underfoot and the occasional birdsong breaking the stillness. Then he said, "You look lighter today." I glanced at him, surprised. "Do I?" He nodded. "More sure of yourself. Or maybe just more curious." We paused near a footbridge, the water below rippling gently. I rested my hands on the railing, watching the current. He stood beside me, but didn't crowd me. "I used to come here with my daughter," he said quietly. "She lives across the country now. New job, new fiancé. You must miss her." "Every day. But I'm proud of her. She built a life on her own terms." The words landed deep. I realized, standing there beside him, that I hadn't made a decision in years that wasn't centered around someone else. Every choice, every plan had been tethered to Mark's career, the kids' schedules, the needs of others. "When do we get to choose ourselves again?" I asked aloud before I could stop myself. Charles looked at me with that same gentle seriousness. "Whenever we're brave enough." We kept walking. There was no moment of crossing a line, no secret touches. But their asterisk was asterisk something, an emotional intimacy that felt almost more dangerous. A quiet unraveling of years of numbness. By the time we circled back to the entrance, the sky was streaked with pink and violet. He stopped beside my car. "Thank you," I said, meaning it more than he probably realized. "For what?" "For seeing me, not as someone's wife, just as me." He smiled again, softer this time. That's all I wanted. I drove home slowly, windows down, the evening air brushing against my cheeks. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, a text from Mark. Asterisk, don't forget we have dinner with the Fergusons tomorrow. 6 p.m. asterisk. I stared at it for a moment, then placed the phone back down. Something inside me was changing, not because of Charles, but because I had finally remembered I was more than the life I had built around others. And that realization, it wasn't going away. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed beside Mark, eyes open in the dark, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing. Everything looked the same. The ceiling fan hummed overhead. The digital clock glowed faintly on the nightstand. And yet, I felt like I was in a different world than the one we shared. For days, I had been walking through my life with a quiet awareness I hadn't felt in years. Like I was standing just outside a glass wall, watching a version of myself who smiled politely, answered texts, made dinner, and filled the silence with safe, familiar words. But now I was inside that glass, feeling everything, hearing every unspoken thought. The next morning, over coffee, I looked at Mark a little longer than usual. His hair was still damp from the shower. He wore the same navy polo he always chose when he had back-to-back meetings. He caught me looking and smiled. Something on my face? I shook my head. No, I was just thinking. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press. He rarely did. After he left for work, I found myself pacing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be said, something honest, something overdue. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I drove to Mark's office. Not the main building, the downtown one, the one where Charles would be. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not out of fear, but because I knew this moment mattered. At the front desk, the same young woman from before smiled politely and buzzed me in. When I reached the top floor, Charles was just finishing a call. He stood as soon as he saw me. "Mrs. Taylor," he said, his expression shifting quickly from surprise to concern. "Is everything all right?" I stepped into his office and closed the door behind me. "I need to say something," I said quietly. "And I need to say it now, before I lose the nerve." He nodded once. "Go ahead." I sat down, clasping my hands in my lap. These past few days, they've stirred something in me. Not about us, whatever asterisk this asterisk is, but about me. Who I used to be, who I stopped being. Somewhere along the way, I buried myself in routines and roles, and I forgot there was still a woman underneath all that. A woman with thoughts and dreams and questions. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, like he always had. You reminded me of that, and I'll always be grateful to you for it. I continued, my voice catching just slightly. But I can't keep coming here. I can't keep walking along a line I'm not ready to cross. He nodded slowly. There was no anger in his eyes, just a kind of knowing sadness. "I understand," he said. I stood. "You didn't do anything wrong. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, a reflection, a moment of clarity. And now backslash. I need to take that clarity back home. To my husband, to myself." He looked at me with something like admiration. "I never wanted anything more than that," he said. "For you to remember who you are." We said goodbye. No hug, no lingering words. Just a quiet mutual understanding that some moments are meant to awaken, not to last. That night, I sat across from Mark at the dinner table. The air was thick with silence, not uncomfortable, just expectant. "Can I ask you something?" I said, setting down my fork. He looked up, surprised. "Of course. When's the last time you really saw me? Not just as your wife, but as me, Claire." He stared at me, eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to find the right answer. And then something in his face softened. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I miss her. I miss you." The words caught in my throat. "I think," I said slowly, "I've been missing me too." We sat there for a while. No accusations, no tears. Just two people looking at each other honestly for the first time in a long time. Later that night, Mark reached for my hand as we got into bed. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. But for the first time in years, I felt a spark of something real. Something that might grow again. Because I wasn't waiting for someone else to see me anymore. I had started seeing myself. And that changed everything.